back, I think this spring or late winter, when my older sister and I were setting out pine trees, I think Susan had gone through family things and had picked out things that she thought Jenny would want, I think. And all these were in the dining room, and I didn't go into the dining room. And anyway, after everybody had gone back home, I noticed a little pink scrapbook on a Baldock chair, and it was Helen's most recent little scrapbook. It had the 1986 reunion pictures with the 4 siblings and the mother, and I still miss the other boxes. And then when I went in there a couple of times and looked at that, I realized that there was a stack of boxes there, and I brought them. And I asked Jason and Richard if they were interested in saving any of that, and they said the main thing that they would really like out of it would be maybe scan and get photographs of things that way, but as far as the collection of artifacts, they weren't real interested. And as we went through there, the thing that fascinated me the most was a little collection of negatives. And the top negative matched up a photo that Dick had converted over to DVD years ago, and I was at Pat's house and had seen a picture of his dad, and I realized that was his dad in that negative. So I took a few of those negatives and had them digitized, because it's so expensive to find someone that can do a black and white. When you digitize the negatives of the quality that she had, they come out just real good. There was some damage on the negative, but this is Helen Baldock Harris at this point, and Pat's mother and dad, Earl Harris. And just looks about, to me, it looks about like the day that the photograph was taken. The good news is this is not the good negative of the couple, and Pat has that negative, and he'll maybe get it in the.
So what year would that be, Dad?
It'd be 30, they got married in 38, so it'd be somewhere between 38 and 40, 41.
And the two people that can recognize most of these people and the others that family members. Her dad was Thomas Eugene Baldock. He was from a farm family that moved into Arkansas from the Tennessee, Kentucky area. He had brothers. He had, I don't know, 3 brothers, 2 sisters. There were at least 6 of them in the family, and he became a merchant. But originally I wondered if he came in from somewhere else because he had died in Battle Creek, Michigan. But his family was a farm family. He established a business in Searcy as a merchant. He was married once before he married Helen's mother. His wife died in 1899, I think. It left him there with one of his parents or grandparents helping. And anyway, he married Nina Pearl Harris, who was 30 at the time. She lived in Arkadelphia with her her brother, Alva Harris. And Helen was born 1909, 1908. Raised in Searcy.
Did she go to Hockaday at any time?
To what?
To Hockaday at any time?
I'm not familiar with that.
Lolly did.
I know Lolly did, but I thought Lolly went because Mother went for a year to Hockaday, but you don't know if that's right or wrong.
Her dad died in Michigan, and I would assume it was because that was the best place for him to get health care at that point. He died in 1923, so she would have been 15, and she inherited 1/4 the estate. Her mother inherited 1/4 of his estate, and Rosalie, the daughter by the first marriage, got half of the estate. And
Was there much of an estate? Was there much of an estate?
there were the land. They had a lot of land, 1,700 acres of land that he had accumulated in small parcels, and it had very little value at that point. And I believe there's a document that says she inherited, her share of it was $7,000, and various stocks. But for that period of time, that's probably a lot of money. But I know that when they got up to the Depression, they had money, and other people had zero money, and even though it may have been a small amount, she had money. She graduated in 1927 from Searcy High School, did the European thing, and then went to Georgia in 1928 to college, a ladies' school. I don't even know how to pronounce it. BRE.
Brevard?
It's in Gainesville, Georgia, right outside Atlanta, and that's probably how she. That's probably why she went back after her everything fell apart for her. She went back to the Atlanta area. That's the only tie I know there. But her first husband was Pete Patho. Had Lolly. Second husband, and they did quite well. That was financially for her. That was a good marriage. Then Mr. Anderson was the second husband.
Dad, not to interrupt you, but when would Nana marry Pete? Like around what year?
That for me, that'd be just guessing.
My mother was born in 1931, so it could be any time. Before
She
that.
graduated high school in 27.
And then she went on the tour.
Okay, but then your mother's born in 31.
He got out of pharmacy school in 31. And he was probably at that point working in St. Louis. He set up his operation in Pacific, Missouri, and 2-3 years later, and it was during that period, I'm going to guess 33, 34, 35, that he would have met Helen. And the person who introduced my father and my mother was a fellow Circean named Sammy James. Sammy James, who was at the funeral of Mother.
Oh.
Because they were classmates. But he was quite old when I first met him. But he was the one that brought the two of them together because Sammy James is also a pharmacist. And my mother was carrying me when they separated and subsequently divorced. So I was born in Arkansas, not in Missouri. And then from that point on,
So did she split, or did he say, I don't want to be married to you
I think
anymore?
she was encouraged to move on
Really? With child?
by my grandfather, I think. Grandfather Anderson.
Your grandfather said, you got to get going? So, like that?
I'm reading between the lines and I'm interpreting what others have told me. But I'm inclined to think that she was asked to leave,
Wow.
told to leave.
So I pick it up, and so
I think then she goes back to Arkansas, where I'm born, and then
right,
I don't
and
know
then she travels and happens to stay at my dad's hotel, the Harris Hotel, on some trip she was going on, and she met my dad, and they got married in '38, and so she had Danny and Lolly, and they all lived in the hotel. Then in '43, they're going to get it. Matter of fact, they started the divorce proceedings. And so she had moved back to Cersei with you all, and then my mom. What are the children here? My mom and my dad met one night in St. Louis in the summer of '43 for a brief moment, and then found out that she was pregnant later. So then the divorce changed because then he wanted custody, and then so he took the case and ran it up to the Supreme Court. The other fathers joined in.
Wait, the Supreme Court of
Arkansas. Because it's back then, or any time, it's hard, for the husband,
Yeah.
for the father. So when that happened, that was '48, and then at that time, then all the fathers came and took the children. Now I'm leaving out Susan. I'm talking about, the fact that we want custody. Well, then when they finally ruled, they had to go through several levels. But when they finally ruled, okay, the father should get custody, that was '48. Now there's a story that Danny can tell prior to the '48, because you actually left a little.
I left in '46 to go live with my dad.
Right.
We were in Arizona, in
Flagstaff.
Flagstaff.
Yeah. Why don't you tell them about the hiding out from the law in Flagstaff?
Well, tell two stories.
Good, man.
Two stories. One, do the butter on the floor. That story.
Yeah,
that's
that's
And then the one you were on the lamb.
Well, yeah, the chronology though, it was hiding out.
We'll go back to the residing in the Harris Hotel. My mother, my sister, myself, and his dad all lived in the suite on the 5th floor, as I recall. It was a suite. And my sister is 5 years older than myself. And we, one afternoon in the morning, whatever it was, we were thinking it would be fun to slide down the linoleum floor in the kitchen area. And we thought it would be better and it would be more efficient if we could put some butter there. Help slide.
Yeah, much better velocity.
Back, put butter down there. I'm maybe 4, 5. So she's 9 or 10. Should have known better, but she didn't.
Yeah.
And so we started sliding, and I tripped and cut the part of the door right here. Of course, there's blood everywhere and all like that. And there's a photograph somewhere, maybe in your collection, that shows like a skull cap right about here, all white, for the what happened as a result of that.
Do you remember it pretty well, or?
Yeah. It's a big impression. And then the other part of the story is to like
Don't try this at home.
from 46 to 48. Whatever the no, it was in like December of 45, January of 46. So she is carrying kind of this is at this point. And we journeyed to Arizona, take the train out to Arizona.
Do you remember why?
I think to escape the worries of the time, being pregnant and then not having a husband and all like that, I presume.
And see, the divorce is going on at this time too.
Right.
So she's having to defend, and I don't know if maybe there was injunctions or that she's not supposed to leave the state or whatever the case may be. Normally there is things like that. So mother decided she'd go anyway.
And she and Dick Irvin and just the three of us. Well, he may have been away at school. I'm kind of thinking. I'm not sure. So the three of us went out to Arizona. Took the train out there. I remember the train. It was loaded with military. This was soon after the end of the war. And we stayed at a hotel for a few days, and we moved to the outskirts. And you and I were there one time, Clark Homes, and so I was there for a few months until I'm going to say after school, May of '46, and I got on a train and came to Missouri, where I stayed the rest of my growing up years.
Well, when was it that she changed your name?
That was in, this is kind of an interesting story here. In 43, 44, or 43, give or take, she changed my birth certificate from Ralph Herbert Anderson Jr. to Danny Eugene. That's page 2. Page 1 said Ralph Herbert Anderson Jr., but there's a page 2, an addendum to that. I looked at my legal counsel here. And that prevailed. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't know. But throughout my life until we got married, I was Ralph H. Anderson Jr. But in fact, I was Danny Eugene. So when we got married, I had to produce a birth certificate for whatever reason. And I saw this page 2 and went to an attorney friend of mine and says, well, how many years has this been? He said, you've been the wrong guy.
That's amazing.
Legally to change. Came back to Ralph.
This explains everything.
So what's
I've
the?
been perplexed for so long. I'm at peace now.
So what's the story about you getting in trouble in Flagstaff?
Oh, I attended a Catholic school as opposed to public school. And I think the idea was to lay low and not advertise where you are. I believe that was the case.
You mean that was you and Pat and your mom?
That's one. I'm thinking back now as he's beginning to talk. That was in the early '46. Was to begin the Catholic school, not public school, so you wouldn't be found out. I think. I went back to live with my dad, and then about '48, my dad and I drove down to. I'm looking at Pat. Down to Rogers to meet with Pat's dad. And I think this ties in with what you're saying.
Right.
At that point in time, there was, I guess, some legal activity that suggested that all these kids need to come under the supervision or care of their fathers or their mother.
Well, what happened is that the divorce started in '44, but to get to the Supreme Court, you have to go through a lot of different courts, and so it took that long to finally work its way there. And then when they got the final decision there, that the fathers had custody, and then that's when the fathers were coming in and taking the children.
But just as a reminder, though, right, there was a point in that period, I don't remember exactly when my dad says, we're going to take you to St. Clair, Missouri, which is about 12 miles, 15 miles away, where my grandmother's two sisters lived, and their family. And so I would stay with a cousin for a period of, I can't remember the days, because there was some concern that mother, and I think the husband named, help me,
Alan Brown.
Brown.
Yeah.
I think Alan Brown and my mother were planning to kidnap.
Is that when she was stopped outside of town and couldn't come in?
That was in
That's a good
That
story
was
too.
Susan.
Was that the high school?
I don't know that we're supposed to.
No,
That's
y'all
the-
watched the
Yes,
Dick
yes.
Irwin
Yeah,
encounter?
yeah.
Okay, Dick Irwin enrolled in the Army right after Pearl Harbor, and he served most of his time in the 15th Air Force in Italy. When, at the end of World War II, when he got back to the States, he went to Searcy as a Kroger manager. And he was fortunate to be at a post office when the lady comes up with a stroller with Pat Harris. And she needed to be able to go into the post office, but she had a baby in the stroller and couldn't make it in without some help. So she entrusted Dick to watch Pat while she went into the post office, and that's how they met. And they did have a lot in common. He was always attracted to beautiful women. We went to the house one time, and Danny could show you exactly where he was when he poured their beer out, because he's tired of all goings on with them. But Helen and Dick were very much a pair, I'm sure. And
How long did that last?
Not too long.
Susan would have been conceived within just weeks of him arriving at Searcy. Then they went to Flagstaff, Arizona. She was born in Flagstaff, and that Dick and Helen lasted 6 months after Susan was born. And Dick said that what he really wanted to do was, she had a little bit of money left, and he had encouraged her to go in business with him with a plant nursery in Searcy. And Rosalie, the sister, helped a little bit, and they kind of shoved him out the door, and he took Susan and ran, and he had had her at Camden, Arkansas a few weeks, and then Sulphur Springs, Texas a few weeks with different relatives. And
Oh, he was encouraged by Helen's sister?
that's the way I remember it, but again, that's not written down somewhere. And
And so, Dad, what year would that have been?
she was born in 46, and you can do the math right quick and kind of see what's happening. But
She really wasn't divorced from Mr. Harris when she married.
She became pregnant with.
Well, there's a divorce, but there's the custody. So the divorce may have been, I'm not sure, Richard would know more about this. It was the custody issue that ran it up the flagpole. It wasn't the divorce.
next door to one of the aunt that didn't have children, that's the house she stayed in. Her aunt next door had 2 children, and everybody in town over the years, they just considered it to be a family with 2 boys and 1 girl. And she had a very good childhood. Her dad, once he kind of got his stuff all straightened out, he was the only thing, she was the only person he spent money on. Just basically went off the grid and took care of her with the 2 aunts' help. And at some point, Helen tried to get, she was married to the Brown guy from Atlanta, and she came for a court procedure at Hope. If you know anything about Arkansas politics, Buddy Sutton, one of the better lawyers or better known lawyers in Little Rock, they lived across the street from Susan. The dad was the sheriff. Anyway, when Mr. Brown, Miss Brown got close to the city limits, they pulled the car over, and visited with them until the court proceedings were over, and then
That's pretty ingenious.
Southern justice.
Southern Justice, and they still do that there. You just don't ever hear it. But
Can you share the bicycle story?
which one?
With the picture of Susan by the bicycle.
Oh,
When I think did she tell you actually
That's a good story.
ride faster or whatever?
oh yeah. She was raised on Highway 4. All the guys in the neighborhood were buddies, and there might have been a girl here and there, but all of her friends were boys. And I was visiting. Well, my mother was visiting her Aunt Susie, the true matriarch of the clan. And I was out sitting on a picnic table waiting for all that to end, and Susan comes riding up on a boy's bicycle. And she explained to me, she was so good at riding that bicycle, she could ride as good as Joe Jones, Bill Butler, Ricky Butler. Anyway, she's pressing around to explain to me how good she was and all that. So, that's
Clearly
pretty.
got your spark there.
There were 3 years difference between you and Susan, is that right?
That's correct.
So you would have been around 10. She was about 7 at that time, or give me some ages.
Yeah, I could actually figure that out real fast because I couldn't ride a bicycle at that point, and I could ride a bicycle at that point when I was in the 4th grade. So you're right on, dead on.
What are those guys?
How long did it take you to learn to ride a bicycle after that challenge?
Probably had some influence on it. What else was the big thing about Helen? And Helen comes to town, and they obviously went to a studio and had pictures made, and Helen would come a lot, and I didn't realize that over the years Dick would keep Helen up to date about Susan, and you could, as I went through this stuff and got the Susan pictures out, and periodically you'd find one that had Dick's writing on the back, and he would send Helen pictures showing progress like that.
So, Helen and Dick started off drinking a lot, stuff like that, but then he sort of cleaned up his act a little bit, or, when Susan was born? Is that what you're saying?
Both of them, I think Danny would tell you, were alcoholics.
Uh-huh.
And he had a nervous breakdown, and once he got out of that, he didn't drink again. But he remembered that Helen drank gin. I know because the night before we were married, Lolly was there, Helen was there, and gin. Anyway, I couldn't understand why Dick would bring out old cheap gin and offer him, because Dick didn't drink, but he had old slow gin stuff, and my gosh, that wasn't even worth pouring out. But he remembered that Helen drank gin. I shouldn't be saying all this stuff with the camera in front of me.
Nothing yet. That's when you began to decide about it.
What's her age? I think she was 48. She'd be 16, 17. So she's pretty much on the edge.
No way it's cool.
Yeah. So
I'll tell you that husband, because of her daughter, because I can recall in that I picked up at age 5 when I was 5. I don't recall anything during my years with her where there was any issue voiced about Pete Lethose. I never saw him, never met him, but it never came up there was an issue. And Lolly had began to move, I think, away from the household by virtue of going to Hockaday.
Right.
It seems like I recall visiting with some think there was some communication back and forth and this and that, but I don't remember anything of a hostile nature that resulted. I don't know whether.
One thing I noticed that's worth mentioning is I saw a little financial book when she lived in Little Rock, and even in it was a 1945 book. In 1945, Pete Betho was still sending Helen a very generous monthly amount of money.
Child support, I guess.
And but in that little book, every month, boom, boom, boom. And that's where a lot of that money came from, you see.
I mean, granted, you can see the alcohol and all that crazy stuff and all that, and I get that. But then if you dig deeper, though, and you look at these people, you got to say, now, wait a minute. There had to be something there. You can't produce the girls like this. And you can't have husbands like this without there being something there. So, and that something sometimes is hard to see, and only the people who were involved with her at that moment probably felt it or saw it. But from afar and from reading back on it, it's harder probably to figure that out.
So, she probably had things that she was, dealing with that were sort of out of her control. Maybe manic depressive, maybe alcoholism, whatever it was.
Right.
Self-medicating.
And in this day and age, that she might get treatment for that, or different dynamic about it or something.
Well, she obviously had beauty, she had charm, she had wit, she had intelligence, she had good taste in men.
Well traveled
Well traveled.
for that time too.
She was adventurous.
I remember telling me stories of going up to Sault Ste. Marie because I had traveled up into northern Michigan as well. Thought that was the greatest thing. Started telling me some of the trips she'd taken. I think she was to the pyramids at one time.
Oh, she could speak French. She could. Could she speak more than French?
I don't know.
I was speaking French. Played the piano. And she played the piano for almost the day she got out.
She did, yeah.